Hi, this is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we critically examine the strategic issues that bedevil Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer simple, practical, but audacious ideas on building the Nigeria of our collective desires. On today's episode of the program, I have a guest with whom we shall be examining the state of our dear nation, Nigeria. But before then, here is what I've titled voter education. It's a sensitization message, to Nigerian voters. Now, as voters prepare to go to the polls and cast their votes in Edo and Ondo states in September and November this year, this is a sensitization program to educate these voters, or the voters of these two states, on what should inform their decisions on the candidates, to cast their votes for. Here are some things they shouldn't do, some don'ts. Number one, don't vote because of money. Number two, don't vote because of tribe. 3, don't vote because of religion. 4, don't vote because you are given bags of rice or bags of beans. Don't vote because a godfather or a politician asked you to vote for a certain person. I was looking at a godfather, a wannabe godfather in one of these two states, speaking on behalf of one of the governorship candidates, and it occurred to me that, when this candidate, this supposed godfather is promoting guests to office, he wants to be the one, the puppeteer, pulling the strings behind the scenes, as it were. Now, the danger with listening to godfathers is that when these so-called incompetent and egregiously, unprepared candidates get to office, the consequence of the poor governance that is going to result, will not affect the godfather or his family. Now, what are some of the things you should do? Number one, vote because they are humble. Vote because the candidates have humility. You can see that they possess humility. How do you measure that? In the run-up to the 2023 general elections, we had candidates who never participated in debates, who never spoke to journalists or media houses prior to, and yet, even 13 months after being elected, this particular candidate has not deemed it fit, to grant any interview to any media organizations. But why should he do that? Because it treated us with scorn and disdain, and he got elected, by the way, in any case. So why does he have to respect us? So if the candidates do not have humility, they don't respect you voters, don't vote for them. Another thing you should do, vote because they're educated, and I'll speak more on this. Vote because they are compassionate. They are compassionate. Vote because they have antecedents. They have a track record. They have a history that is verifiable. Another thing you should do, vote because they have character. They possess good character. Who are their friends? What have they done in their lives? Do they have records with the anti-corruption agencies and all of that? Character. Character is like smoke. You cannot hide it. Vote because you are convinced on their preparation for the position they seek. Vote because you can ascertain their level of preparedness for the positions for which the office or the position they seek. Now, you see, elections have huge implications. I cannot get tired of saying this. Elections have huge implications. Elections have grave implications. Indeed, elections have life or death, prosperity or poverty implications. Elections have the potentials to alter the course of your lives irreparably. Elections have the potentials to alter the course of your lives irreparably. Your children's lives can be affected badly. Your health, mental and physical, can be affected badly. Your careers can be affected. Your peace can be affected. Your happiness, your security, etc. Elections, therefore, have, huge repercussions. Elections have huge fundamental, repercussions. Now, as a citizen of a country, of a state, or a local government, one of your most sacred duties in a democracy, which we claim to practice, is your vote. Therefore, you have heard it being said, and I concur, use your vote wisely. It's been said, and I agree entirely, use your vote wisely. Don't be careless. Don't be senseless. And by all means, do not be sentimental with your vote. A wrong choice with your vote can change your life positively or negatively forever. I mean, Africa's richest man, who happens to be a Nigerian, who supported a particular, candidate, is going through, the nose is being dragged, through the iron furnace as I speak here, because elections can change your life positively or negatively forever. Now, for instance, I said I'll speak more on education. If any candidates in these two states' governorship elections do not have a minimum verified university degree, do not vote for them. You know why? I'll tell you why. In this 21st century, to be a president, governor, senator, House of Reps member, House of Assembly member, local government chair, etc., will involve having proven competencies in the following: management of people and resources, administration, leadership, especially leadership, empathy, governance skills, conflict management, communication skills, organizational skills, team building skills, and of course, quality succession. I mean, imagine the scenario playing out in the United States of America. President Biden chose a lady, Kamala Harris, to be his vice president in 2020 presidential elections. He didn't choose her because he just wanted a clown, or someone who would not rock the boat. He chose that lady because he believed she was able to step in on day one and assume the role of the presidency. It's playing out as we speak now. She's going to be the presidential candidate. She's actually the presidential candidate of a major political party in America, the first or the second female, presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, because someone chose her as a worthy, successor. Now, if all a candidate in the forthcoming elections possess is WAEC or its equivalent, do not vote for them. They are not qualified, period, regardless of whatever the law says. I tell you, if they don't have minimum verifiable degree, do not vote for them. If you vote based on sentiments or inducements, you and your loved ones will suffer badly and pay a heavy price. A perfect example, like I'd mentioned, how are we faring in Nigeria currently? This debacle we're in currently should be where we all, as Nigerians, draw the line and say, never again will I vote or will you vote on sentiments. The choice is yours. Remember, your vote is your power. Remember, your vote is your power. In a democracy, we, the voters, are the authentic kingmakers. No godfather is a kingmaker in a democracy. We, the people, we, the voters, are the authentic. We are the authentic kingmakers. So I tell you once again, use your vote wisely. Use your vote wisely, because elections have huge repercussions. Elections have grave implications. Use your vote wisely. If they're not qualified on the parameters I've outlined, do not vote for them. Don't take money and vote. Even if you take ₦1 million, those who collected 1 million naira, 2 million naira, and I'm speaking very loftily, many who voted in 2023 general elections collected 5,000, 10,000. Some collected wrappers. Some collected bags of rice. Some have died. Some are crying of hunger. Now, don't do that. The meaning of insanity is to keep doing the same things and expecting different outcomes. Use your vote wisely. And that's my take. I'll take this short break, and when I return, I'll get right into the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. My guest today is Professor Chidi Odinkalu. He was the former chairman of the Nigerian, is it Nigerian or National?
National Human Rights.
National Human Rights Commission, Nigeria. But currently is a professor at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. Prof, good to see you.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Love to know you. I'm fine. And you?
We survived.
Finally, we get to sit down.
Yes, indeed.
It's been a long time coming. Chased you all over the world. Anyway, better late than never. Nice
Absolutely,
having you,
yes.
Prof.
Thank
nice
you for having me.
There's a lot we need to cover in a short time because I know you're an extremely busy man. But on a lighter note, before we get into serious issues, why do you like trouble? Why do you like making trouble?
No, I don't. I frankly don't like trouble, and I hope I don't make trouble. But I think we're in a situation in which we need to be honest with ourselves and our country. And because of General Abacha, I'm loyal became a Nigerian byword for anything goes. And unfortunately, things are dreadful in the country. Things are very hard for everyone. And the least we can do is acknowledge reality with honesty in order that we may be able to address it and mobilize the assets needed to address the situation with the seriousness it deserves.
So that we don't deceive ourselves or paper over the cracks.
Precisely.
Okay,
and Nigeria has
absolutely
daunting challenges.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Prof, let's get into it. You seem to be, doing a one-man crusade to rid a judiciary of systemic rot, bad apples, as it were. Two quick examples. May 27th this year, you wrote an article on Justice Mohammed Ladan Samani, if I'm not mistaken. Samia, sorry. I mean, what I read there, they were grievous, and just a couple of, maybe a week max, I also read something you put out on the current chief judge of Imo State, who is alleged to have falsified her age, ostensibly to have 2 more years, in office. But not just that, she also used the apparatus of the office to get an injunction to bar anyone from making an inquiry as to whatever shenanigans. My question is, Prof, how bad is our situation? How bad is our judicial system? What's the state of our judiciary?
At the leadership levels, it's dreadful. This is my view. But that may not totally reflect what the reality is. There are lots of tremendous judges who are working under very challenging conditions to do the best they can. And being a judge is not easy, particularly in our situation. Lots of them don't have a life, and if you try to do things the right way, you suffer for it. Oyo State just buried a judge, or is burying a judge this week. Oyo State has, the number of judges in Oyo State with the burial taking place this week has come down to 19. And Oyo State is a very litigious place. Ibadan alone is fantastically litigious, right? Yeah. And we have 19 judges to serve the entire state. Oyo is the biggest state.
33 local governments.
In southern Nigeria. And so they are overworked. Many of them don't get as much pay as the work deserves. And so I have a lot of sympathy for the honest judges, hardworking judges. And, they do exist. Unfortunately, I cannot name them, because if I name them, they will suffer inside the system. And so we've got to find alternative methods of solidarity with those kinds of judges and of acknowledgement for them, at least until they retire. However, at the senior-most levels, I think we have had a dreadful time. As a matter of fact, since Chief Justice, the tenure of Katsina Alu. So we've had Katsina Alu, Dahiru Musdafa, Aloma Mukhtar, Justice Mahmood, Onogen, then we had Tanko, and the current incumbent. Of that number, all but Aloma Mukhtar and Chief Justice Mahmood have retired under a cloud or have run the office under a cloud. That tells you something. We started off with the problem of the Salami Katsina Alu crisis, Sokoto State governorship crisis, which was inchoate. Went from Dahiru Musdafa was implicated in that. It was never resolved. And the PDP government then decided they were going to tough out Salami in order to be able to do that. And that was prejudicial to the facts. And as I said, other than Aloma Mukhtar and Justice Mahmood, Chief Justice Mahmood, the rest who have held that office have held it without distinction and with blemish. And when the Chief Justice cannot be is not occupied by a person of impeccable integrity, it cascades down the decision-making chain. And so the place is rife with scandal at the senior levels, and that is the misfortune we've all got to deal with. I can only say this, no, I'm not the only person concerned. A lot of judges in the system are very concerned about it at all levels, right up to the Supreme Court, from the lowest levels of the court system. And many of them, I talk with a lot of judges. I went to school with a lot of judges. And so I know that many of them are concerned. I also have colleagues in the civic sector. And so I don't know whether you've seen the latest report by Citizen Gavel on nepotism in the Nigerian judicial system.
Yeah. Just delve into it, please.
This is no longer a one-man person. Now, a one-man affair.
Yeah.
At a point, it was important to take on the issue and flag it as essential for attention. Because
how dangerous is institutionalizing, nepotism, as it were, in the judiciary? What's the implication on the justice delivery system, on the fairness, the equity that is inherent in a fair and equitable judicial system?
You need to read the Citizen Gavel report. It's not long. It's a 40-something page document. But you see, when you plant a 32-year-old or 33-year-old as a judge who is incapable and incompetent and has never worked as a lawyer, taught nor practiced, nor worked as a magistrate or with any modicum of respectability, and you plant this 32, 33-year-old as a high court judge in a situation in which retirement age is 70, you're destroying the person, you're destroying the people who come before them, and you're destroying the system. Removing a judge is not that easy. And a lot of these kids, and kids they are, by the way, a lot of these incapable kids who have been planted, as, I call them, Papa Madi judges, when President Mitterrand was the president of France, his son, he sent his son as his envoy to Francophone Africa. And whenever he arrived to any of these destinations, the presidents, the son was signed in with the call sign, Papa Madi has arrived, or Papa Madi est là. And Papa Madi is, Dad has told me, Dad has told me to tell you. So these are people I call Papa Madi judges, right? And, or Mama Madi. So you line up these Papa Madi judges, and they are supposed to take, litigants and take cases and rule on them when they don't know anything. And we're never interested in being judges anyway. You've got a system-wide problem. And when you do that to scale, you then create a justice system that is incapable. What that means is people will no longer be going to court. They'll be resolving their issues outside court. Self-help, vigilantism, violence. Is there any... You now begin to understand why we're where we are as Nigerians.
Chidi, how did we get to this point from the era of... you and I are still in our midlife
years, crisis.
Midlife, we're not old men,
We're not exactly young
we're not old men. Of course, we're not young, but we're not old also. My point is, 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, you and I knew of the Coyote shows. We met these guys on the bench.
Esho actually signed my paperwork to the Nigerian Bar.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We became men when we got to know of these giants of the legal, of both the bar and the bench. The Coyote shows, Chukwudifu Oputa, Nikki Toby, the list is endless. I mean,
Mohammed Uwais.
Mohammed Uwais.
He's still alive.
Mohammed Uwais, how did he get to this point, Chidi?
Well, that's a long story. I just finished.
We'll make it short because
I just finished a book manuscript on that, actually.
Okay.
Hopefully.
What's the single? Is it because I'm not sure it's the military? Because under the military, that's when these guys I mentioned functioned. They stood their ground.
This actually probably began under the military, but the slide has been gradual, and it was not noticed as clearly as it should have. But something happened under Buhari, 1984. or two things. Number one was the casualization of judges into becoming assessors for military tribunals. And when that happened, you had a divide amongst judges, and collaboration became the pathway to judicial attainment. And so, if you look back at that period, it was under Buhari that Katsina Alu went from High Court of Benue State to Court of Appeal. In going from High Court of Benue State to Court of Appeal, Justice Idoko, Alhassan Idoko, who was number 2, became Chief Judge. Katsina Alu, who was number 3, was sent up to the Court of Appeal. James Ogebe, who was number 1, was demoted. Ogebe did not arrive the Supreme Court until 2008. By then, Katsina Alu was about to become Chief Justice, who was his junior as a judge, right? So these people created perverse incentives. And by the way, Katsina Alu started his life as a soldier. He went to do military training in Mons. Guess who his mate was in Mons?
Wow.
Buhari.
Wow.
All right?
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
so this is one thing.
Wow.
Now, the second thing was that the military, when they came in under Buhari, decided that they were going to make sure that the judiciary was under its thumb. Two things happened. One was the decapitation of Justice Yaya Jinadu in the Lagos High Court in 1984 by the man who became governor of Benue State, of Edo State, and later chairman of the APC, John Oyegun, who was permanent secretary.
Absolutely.
Then, following the Necom fire incident. The second was the firing of Emmanuel Araka as chief judge of Old Anambra State by Alison Madueke, authorized by Tunde Idiagbon.
Wow.
And if you read Alison Madueke's memoirs, he says himself that the reason Araka was fired was because he was too independent-minded. Or to use his words, he had a mind of his own. Quotes. Now, because they got rid of judges who had minds of their own, judges decided that having a mind of your own was
inimical to your career.
Precisely. And the judiciary, these people then started planting in the judiciary judges who lacked minds of their own. And what we are seeing now is the generational consequence of what started then.
Brilliant, brilliant. But permit me to say, would you, as bad as what you narrated, would you consider that to, because if it was gradual deterioration under the military, from 99 to date, 25 years, how would you describe because this is not gradual. The deterioration is mind-blowing.
Something else
Chidi,
happened.
Sorry, Chidi, what is going on now for me? I've written extensively on it. I have a book, a couple of books or 3. I've focused extensively on the judiciary. What is going on is more or less a cash and carry judiciary.
But something else happened. Since Obasanjo came into power, in the transition from, you see, in nearly 20 years before 2007, we had only 2 chief justices. Yes? In 5 years after that, we had 5 chief justices. And after Justice Uwais, you then had, until then, from Adetokunbo Ademola until Uwais, there was only one son of a chief justice who became a judge. That was Neko Ademola. Yes? And nobody would say that Neko Ademola lacked the capability to be a judge.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. After him, however, you will struggle to find, again, you remove Aloma Mukhtar, you remove Chief Justice Mahmood. Otherwise, the others have enabled themselves and their networks through their office. So the nepotism that has undermined the integrity of our judicial system, you can date from where it began and how it began. And who began it. I don't want to name those names now, but it is easy to date where it began.
Absolutely. Let's wrap up on this, but I need to ask you. If I won't ask you, I won't even forgive myself. You know, if not that I know that you are not of the same age, you are not the same peer with Chief Justice or look out there, well, I would have said, are you guys chasing a babe together? Did he take your girlfriend or something?
Yes, he did, actually. Frankly, he did. No, seriously. No society.
You've been on his case,
I
Chidi.
have to be on his case. If nobody chooses
Okay,
to, if everyone
seriously,
chooses
Chidi,
to abdicate, that's our their responsibility.
How serious is the office of the CGN, not just impacting on the judiciary, but the entire system? How, Chidi, try and do this maybe 1
The
minute so
Chief
that...
Justice is everything in the system. Money, promotions, appointments, training, access to medicals,
Discipline.
everything. There is discipline. There is nothing you can do without the Chief Justice.
Appointment of conferring of silk.
Absolutely everything. So when the Chief Justice is crooked, there is a problem. It affects all of us. It affects our society. It affects our safety and security. It affects people whom we love. It affects the credibility of our country. It affects investments into our country. It affects the money we make. It affects the debts the liabilities we assume.
Absolutely.
It affects everything.
Absolutely.
So yes, he took my cheek.
I read a report by what's this foreign rating agencies giving out an
It's not
investors.
Fitch.
No, not Fitch, not even Standards and Poor's. One of them, Moody's, I think.
Okay.
So they were giving an advisory to a potential investor, and I was stunned because I sat with this potential investor, a foreigner in London, and he was saying, "I'm not interested in all these other ones. I'm interested in your judiciary." So he was looking at. So he got there, and then he saw on a scale of 0 to 5, 5 being the highest, and it was 2, 1, 2. So he said, "No, I can't invest."
Precisely.
Now, the basis of those ratings was the length of time it will take you to remain in court in our judicial system, and that the judges in our judicial, most of the judges in our judicial system are prone to inducement. Chidi, we can
go on about
spend
this.
the
As
whole
I said,
time on
I
this.
just finished a book manuscript on it.
I can't wait to lay my hands on that. Let's move on, Chidi. Local governments now. Incidentally, the Supreme Court gave a verdict recently on the financial autonomy, as it were, for local governments. I welcome that, even though I know it's not extensive enough to guarantee good governance. But you and I should agree that the failure of local governments is largely responsible for the breakdown of law and order in Nigeria and good governance or development. What's your problem with that judgment? Why don't you celebrate it? Why don't you welcome it?
No, I can't celebrate the judgment. First of all, I think this is a political issue. The judiciary cannot resolve it. That's the first thing.
Okay.
And it's political in terms of both political settlement as to the nature of federalism we run, and secondly, the ethics of underlying our politics. This is not about sending money to local governments, no. And I think it is perverse to frame it as sending money to local governments. By the way, if you're talking about sending money to local governments, the joint account, the state-local government joint account is a constitutional requirement, right? The Supreme Court, as supreme as they are, cannot rewrite our constitution without our consent. That is not part of the judicial mandate. Now, if you're saying...
Sorry, but it is part of their remit to interpret the constitution.
The local government joint account, the only place that we can pay money going to local government under this constitution as it is, under its terms, is the local government joint account. How do you send the money to local government?
Yes, the argument of the Supreme Court, and I want to align, I didn't say I agree, I just said align or tilt towards, is that the governors, you and I agree, Chidi, the governors have abused that provision. The intendment, of the framers of our constitution.
It is not up to the Supreme Court if the governors have abused it. And I do agree, by the way, that the governor, that's not open to dispute. Yes? It is not up to the Supreme Court to rewrite the text of the Constitution. What they should do...
What they've done is not rewrite, Chidi. What they've done is to interpret that governors, this JAC, Joint Accounts Allocation Committee, is not for you to now become the custodians of it or the senior. So you now give whatever you feel like. No, it is a joint account, especially that when the FAC comes there and then internal generated revenues come there, you guys sit together. Like at the FAC, the Minister for Finance, Commissioners for Finance sit together. So at the state and local government level, the Commissioner for Finance in the state sits together with all the chairmen and agree That, okay, this is what has come
But in many
and this is
most
the sharing
cases,
formula.
in most states, actually, that's what happens.
They don't do that.
No, wait. No, actually, no. Now, you see, I'm the pro-chancellor right now of the Anambra State University. So I'll give you an example, right? And we get a monthly subvention from the state government. And actually, that subvention is made up of money contributed by the state government and money contributed by the local governments by consent.
Oh, really?
Absolutely, yes.
Wow, interesting.
By consent.
Interesting.
The state government puts in money, and the local governments put in money because admissions are generated from all the 21 local governments of Anambra State. Okay? Now, in many states, this is what happens, but that is not the origin of the issue.
Okay.
The origin of the issue is that the mandate of the people at the local government is polluted. By the way, I agree with the Supreme Court that no one should run local governments without an elective mandate. I agree with that. What I dispute is the idea that, many of this, apart from Justice Adumei, who did politics and who sought to be president of Nigeria as a matter of fact, most of them in the Supreme Court don't know anything other than I have been directed to. Most of them were civil servants, right? Now, what the problem is here is that the CX, relying on jurisprudence by the Supreme Court, are polluted. So you don't have competitive elections at the local government, and state governors tell the CX to write up results, and these people then go there and become local government chairpersons. With the best will in the world, they cannot do anything, and they're as crooked as anything.
Absolutely.
And you see, now the answer to that is for my dear friend and law school mate, Godswill Akpabio, to say they now want to federalize local government and have a local government electoral commission run by the federal government. That completely ruins the idea of federalism.
Brilliant. I agree with you entirely on that. So, CX, states independence, there is nothing independent about those so-called
Just as there is nothing independent about
INEC
Mahmoud.
itself. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But how do we, because much as I love to appreciate to some extent this disbursement of money directly to local governments, you know, I agree with you to some extent that it's not the cure-all. I totally agree, but because until you have independent people who are credibly elected,
Credibly elected. Absolutely.
Credibly elected. We're not going anywhere.
Precisely.
You're just giving money to a different set. You're just creating a different set of thieves and, you know, and criminals. How do we strengthen the CX to make sure because some are going, and I'm surprised when I see otherwise intelligent people saying INEC should go conduct. INEC has not finished conducting proper elections, you know, for president, for governors and whatever. You want them to go and conducting, you know, local governments all over. I mean, for goodness sake.
Or you want EFCC to be monitoring
who does that?
areas.
You know, for goodness sake. That's a recipe for disaster. You know, how do we firewall CX so that state governors will not use their I don't want to use, I mean, what's in my mind is this, somebody described, Bolage described Abacha, those 5 political parties as, you know, the leprous fingers of a leprous or something like that. You know, how do we ensure we safeguard the local governments? Chidi, if we don't do that, this country is collapsing.
Quite honestly, the easiest way to safeguard local government elections is for INEC to work. If INEC sets a good example, government at the federal level will have the authority to say, you see what we are doing. The standards, and this is why I say this cannot be cured by the judiciary, certainly not by the judiciary we have now. Why is that so? The judiciary itself has engineered this jurisprudence of what I call jurisprudence of illegitimate mandates. Now, you cannot be producing the kind of electoral jurisprudence that the Supreme Court has produced and then expect local elections to be different. Nor indeed can you seek to extend the mandate of the terminal date of the Inspector General of Police by 4 years in order to stay around and rig the 2027 elections and then expect that you will have local elections that will be free of complaint. And this is why I go back to my point. This is about the political settlement that underpins Nigeria and the ethics of political contestation. It can only be fixed by politicians. Dragging judges into enabling the current party in power to power grab 774 local governments and hollow them out is a recipe for disaster.
Brilliant. Chidi, let's take a break. We'll
By all means.
We'll take this short break, and when we return, we'll continue with the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Chidi, before we went on that short break, let's look at the Southeast. I thought we've buried the ghost of Biafra.
No.
I mean, I remember, yeah, you said no. You know.
That's factually accurate.
But one of my favorite Nigerians, Dim Chukwuemeka Odumegu Ojukwu, appealed to Southeasterners. You know that this war is over. Let's move on. What's going on, Chidi? Why this persistent or recurring clamor for Biafra? You know, IPOB and all of them, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. What's going on, Chidi? I know we could spend the whole day on this.
No, actually,
it's
a very brief issue.
Yes.
First of all,
what's going on, Chidi?
First of all, the biggest security issue in the Southeast is not IPOB.
Okay.
It is cults. It's
cults.
Oh, absolutely, yes. By a vast country mile.
Wow.
This is the first thing people need to understand.
Wow.
And I can now tell...
That's why I needed an intellectual who is not a politician to come and be gaslighting the people.
Every amount of authority and responsibility I can muster. I have spent 2 years of my life pretty much next to full time on this particular issue. I've trekked around the Southeast, I've okadaed around the Southeast, I have done keke and pipe in many of the communities, and it is quite clear to me that the biggest single crisis, and you know, mortality patterns, everything, violence patterns will tell you, cults and gangs.
Wow.
And around that,
so
you've got
purely
guns,
criminality.
Criminality, that's the first thing. Now, secondly, it's not as if there is not an IPOB issue, but you see, you have a continuum here going back to Bakassi, okay? That is around the time that Abacha died, okay? And from Bakassi through the political godfathers of Anambra to Masob to the political, you know, the return of the political bandits to the onset of IPOB, ESN, there is actually a continuum here.
So it's just
IPOB,
one set metamorphosing, mutating from one form into another.
It's been a succession of mutations.
Wow.
And at the heart of this, in my view, is the fact that Nigeria won the war, but lost the peace. Nigeria profoundly lost the peace.
Wow. Wow.
The last president who made the effort to address the issue of winning the peace was Shehu Shagari.
Really?
And we have not really given Shagari
Really?
the credit he deserves.
Really?
The last president to make the effort at healing Nigeria was Shehu Shagari.
Wow.
Quite evidently. And there's a reason why. Shagari was there at the beginning of the story. He was one of the founders of NPC.
Yeah, MPN.
NPC.
Okay, yeah, NPC. People's
Northern
Congress.
People's Congress.
Exactly.
Yes? Mutane Arawa. Yes? Now, and he was a young teacher then, and he was there in the government of national unity 1953-54. He was there at independence as a minister. He was there at the coup, and he was there in the post-coup period and worked with all of these people, Obasanjo, Awolowo, Gowon, the lot of them in cabinet. He knew everybody. And so when he became president, Shagari's biggest achievement, in my view, was trying to heal Nigeria.
Bringing Alex Ekweme
He
as
brought
VP.
Ekweme back. He helped Ojukwu to come back. Brought Ojukwu back.
Absolutely.
He brought Gowon back. Right? And I don't think we've credited Shagari for his commitment
You're actually opening my eyes to this,
Nigeria, you know, as an entity. What has happened subsequently, I think no president has come close to the... Oh, by the way, he didn't just stop there. It's not just that he returned Gowon, Ojukwu, Ekweme, and Shagari. He returned Ojukwu, Ekweme, and Shagari. He returned Gowon, 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 Oj and had Ekweme as his vice.
Restored Ojuku's rank and all of that.
There's something else he did. There is only one Nigerian who has never held the position of head of state, who has Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic. You know who he is? Obafemi Awolowo.
Absolutely.
Who made Obafemi Awolowo GCFR?
Shagari.
It was Shehu Shagari.
Shagari.
And he did it in great confidence because he did not agree with Awolowo, but he respected Awolowo deeply.
Absolutely.
That kind of politics no longer exists.
Absolutely.
And without understanding this background and context, we miss the point about Biafra.
Before we close on this Southeast issue, what do you think the larger Nigeria should do? Not just the leadership. I'm worried, at the back and forth between tribes in Nigeria, Yoruba, Igbos, and even though some of these skit makers say it and I laugh at it because to an extent it's true. No, there's a skit maker that said, if you follow Yoruba and Igbos on their online war, you are deceiving yourself because they will shout at each other, they will bark at each other online, but then on the weekends they will go and marry each other, It sounds funny.
Sleep with
it's
each
true.
other.
They sleep with each other, I mean, I'm married to an Igbo woman. How do we ensure that there is proper healing? The ethnic divisions in Nigeria is sickening. It's
scary. By the politicians.
It's scary, yeah. Yes. And tie this in, Chidi, how is the release of Nnamdi Kanu? I don't support the rhetoric. Some of the things Mazi Nnamdi Kanu said were totally, disgusting. And that's been
completely.
mild.
Completely. There is no...
Utterly reprehensible.
Completely.
But then, should his continued detention and then if the court grants him bail, you find that another way. How do we solve the problems of the Southeast? 1 minute, so that we can take one more question.
There are no problems of the Southeast that are not problems of Nigeria. Okay? And I come at this, my primary home is in Lagos, for instance. And, I went to law school because a Yoruba woman from Ondo State, from Ondo Town in Ondo State, gave me accommodation on Glover Street.
Wow.
So when people come to say these things, I find myself unable to get into that kind of dialogue. Yeah. I have a responsibility to honor the memory of that woman. She's now late. Her son, whom I went to school with, is a senior advocate of Nigeria. And so every problem of the Southeast is a problem of Nigeria.
Absolutely.
And we've got to deal with this as a country that wants to be at peace with one another. And for me, education is a big deal.
Absolutely.
Okay? People don't understand that Yoruba people were in Sokoto long before the jihad. Sokoto State has elected a Yoruba man as governor.
I mean, look at Jos.
Yeah, Abdurrahman.
Absolutely.
Yes?
Absolutely.
Funtua is nearly 40% Yoruba settlement. It's in Katsina State.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
All right?
Wow.
Now, to the Nupawa in Kano is a Nupe settlement. Who did it produce? Sabo Bakinzuo. Sabo Bakinzuo was who? A Nupe who became governor of Kano State. Now, the narratives of integration and mutual support we have forgotten in this country. And we need to go back and excavate
there was a Mohammed Al-Sine, if I'm not mistaken.
Who was mayor of Enugu.
Yeah, is it mayor? Yeah, mayor of Enugu.
Exactly. Yes? Now, I can go on, I can tell these stories, and I've told you here.
Should Nnamdi Kanu be released? What do you think?
That's not my decision.
Okay.
My view is no citizen should be above the law, and no citizen should be put beneath the law.
Absolutely.
And to the extent that Nnamdi Kanu appears to be put beneath the law, we need to write that. That's the principled stand that I take on this.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, anti-corruption war. I observed you've been heavily critical of this current EFCC. Okay, all the EFCC chairmen anyway. I mean, both their approach, the personnel and all of that. But this current one, especially on the case of Yaya Bello and Bobrisky, living a python in your house and chasing a rat. Yeah. What's the solution to this perennial EFCC, ICPC, malfunctioning, the dysfunction? What's the solution to it?
I think that's that's a very substantial
I think he started off saying the right things, but then I think he's missed his way, actually.
I think it's a very substantial agenda. What I can say is this. He and I agreed we would meet.
Okay.
And we've had a conversation.
Okay.
And we've agreed to work together.
Okay, brilliant. I must be clairvoyant for me to have picked this up.
No, no. I've got to be quite honest about
Absolutely.
that. We've agreed that the anti-corruption fight is very important.
Very, very
and
critical.
we are going to make the best effort to collaborate
Absolutely.
to the on all sides
Beautiful.
to see how we advance that goal.
This gladdens my heart.
We will not always agree, and I still don't. I still think that what's happened to Bobrisky is an absolute disgrace and a travesty.
Absolutely.
And to prove that, what has happened with Pascal Okechukwu,
Cubana chief priest,
is proof that Bobrisky suffered a travesty. And no Nigerian, again,
just like you said, yes.
No Nigerian should be treated the way
double
Bobrisky
standards of law, of the legal system.
Precisely.
No.
And you see, at the ethnic level, I come from the same place. Not just from the same.
Oh, really?
Place.
Wow.
Place.
Wow.
As
Cubana chief priest.
But I cannot.
Absolutely.
I cannot.
No, that's why you're my friend. I mean, I cannot deal with people who,
say what has happened with him is right and what happened with Bobrisky is wrong because Bobrisky is not from my ethnic group or from my village.
No.
Every one of us is a human being. Every one of us is a Nigerian. Treat us fairly, and as long as we are citizens. So on that I disagree. But I have given my word, and he has given me his word, and we are going to put one another to a test.
I'll be watching out for that. I'll be on the lookout for that because we need to strengthen the anti-corruption war.
No, absolutely, yes.
Otherwise, these guys, these politicians, have taken us for a ride for enough. I think we need to calm down. The state has got to calm down heavily on these guys, and let them know we're not fools.
Completely.
Two quick things before we go. Can you give me a 1-minute assessment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration? Less than a minute or so.
No.
Just a general assessment.
I'll be unable to because I cannot be held responsible for what I say. But I don't think it's necessary for me to assess the administration. Nigerians will assess the administration if they are given the opportunity in fairness to do so.
Okay. There's a proposed end bad governance strike.
I will join it.
You will join?
Absolutely.
Oh, you've already given your
I will join it. So, and I'll give you the reason why.
Okay.
I was minded to be an observer, but I cannot be an observer given what my good friend Godswill Akpabio is doing in the Senate. Godswill is the biggest, in my view, right now, Godswill Akpabio is the biggest enemy of the Nigerian state.
That's a heavy word. That's a heavy...
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Wow.
I say this with a heavy heart, but a clear conscience.
Can I rephrase that to say enabler rather than enemy?
No, enemy. No. You cannot be doing... Now, you cannot change...
You passed the...
Enemy of the Nigerian state.
Chidi, this National Assembly passed the national anthem, whatever, in maybe...
No Nigerian was consulted.
Then I noticed yesterday they passed
we have appropriated to buy a private jet. No Nigerian was consulted, and we are all dying.
Minimum wage, okay, that's good. Maybe
now,
2 hours.
As we speak,
the IG
they
of
have
police, the
passed
police,
a bill
the police act
to extend the tenure
because of an individual.
Because of an individual. That precisely.
Because of an individual.
This is exactly the reason why I will join that demonstration. Because of the bill to extend the tenure of IG Egbetokun. I have nothing against Egbetokun.
No, it's not about personalities.
It's not about him.
No.
Okay? And
it's the precedent.
If Tinubu wants to have every IG from his bedroom, by all means, let him do so. Yes. But the idea of changing the law in order to extend the tenure
of the lawlessness did not even contemplate this.
No. To extend the tenure of Egbetokun, that is the reason I will join this protest. And that is the reason I'm now an amplifier of that protest.
Wow.
That's the biggest single thing about this for me. It emblematizes everything that is wrong with the current dispensation that we are in.
Wow. Nice place to live with Chidi. Always a pleasure, meeting you, having a conversation with you. I hope we can do this again.
By all means.
Please.
I don't have another country. And I keep saying it. I am not a Nigerian by birth and by descent alone. I'm a Nigerian by choice.
Absolutely. Just as I am.
It's easy to acquire another nationality or acquire another passport. Whatever it will take.
We love this country. You and I grew up in a country that worked. We grew up in a country where we had heroes, people we looked up to, wanted to be like. But what do we have?
Precisely.
What do we have now? Chidi, nice seeing you.
My brother.
Thank you so much, Chidi. Thanks for coming.
May God keep us.
Now, that's the end of the program today. Like I always say, change requires action. Positive change requires positive action. Follow me on my various YouTube channels. The full version of this interview will be on my YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. You can watch it there. Drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.